got a series of speeches to celebrate the event here in the city. This is the first arrival of the Flame within Cambridgeshire, and throughout the weekend it will go on to other events throughout the county. So have a look at your programme and see whether there are other things that you would like to go to celebrate this important, I think, symbol of the Paralympics. I'm not going to speak for very long, partly because I have to stand on tiptoes in order to reach the mic, and partly because I'm really just here at this stage to introduce Paul Saunders, Deputy Mayor of Cambridge City Council. So I'll hand over to Paul now. Thank you.
Thank you very much. On behalf of Cambridge City Council, I'd like to welcome you to today's Paralympic Flame celebration, held as part of London 2012 Paralympic Torch Relay. This week, a number of exciting flame creation events took place in England, Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland. On Wednesday the 22nd of August, the English flame was created at the summit of Scafell Pike. The flame was placed in a miner's lantern and transferred to London, where it lit a number of other flames to start a day of Paralympic celebrations across the country, including, I'm delighted to say, here in Cambridge at Netherhall School. Today at Netherhall, we have seen the culmination of a fantastic Parasport fortnight. 2 weeks of Paralympic sports opportunities for all the community to participate in, including goalball, boccia, wheelchair basketball and tennis. Sports programmes like these and the District Sports Fair and Arts Festival here on the 28th of October will encourage people inspired by the Olympics and Paralympics to have a go and to realise their ambitions. We hope that everyone who has taken part has had fun and had the chance to, and will have the chance to continue. The Council also funds a Future Champions programme to support talented young athletes in reaching their potential. And it gives me pleasure to thank and congratulate them for their role in the flame bearing today. Finally, I would like to congratulate all those who have taken part and also thank all those who have helped to make these events possible, including many local sports clubs, Cherrington Residents Association and Cherrington Festival Committee, Cambridge Volunteer Centre, Netherhall School, Sainsbury's, St John's Ambulance, Inspire, and Dan Gordon, Matthew Juniper and Living Sport. I will now pass over to County Councillor Martin Curtis to talk to us about the weekend of Paralympic events in the rest of Cambridge.
Can I first just start by endorsing those thanks, from the County Council perspective as well. I think this has been a fabulous event and a great way to start what is going to be a phenomenal, and a fantastic weekend. I've said a number of times that taking the political lead for the Olympics in Cambridge here has been all pleasure. And actually this afternoon's event and what we've got going on this weekend is a perfect example of that. And I'd repeat what was said earlier, if you get the opportunity to get out and about around the county at our events, please do. We've got events in every single district in the county, and it was important to us that when we were asked, do we want to have a role with the Paralympic Flame, it was important to the Gold Group who have been looking after the Olympics and coordinating the Olympics in the county, that we had every single district involved, partly because a number of our districts were a little disappointed about the torch relay. And I think this is fantastic compensation. It's a way of celebrating what is going to be a fantastic Paralympic Games in the country, but also in Cambridgeshire. And we've got events like the Hudson Leisure Centre in Woodbeach on Sunday. Tomorrow afternoon we've got a flotilla of boats going through Ely. A number of phenomenal events where we can celebrate everything that's great about the Paralympics. So please, if you get the opportunity to come along. And I want to say one other thing. One of the things I've said following the success of the Olympic Games was actually, I'm a massive football fan, but footballers need to learn from some of our Olympians. They absolutely do. But I tell you this, we've seen nothing yet. The backstories and the stories that are going to come out about our Paralympic champions and our Paralympians over the next few weeks are going to be phenomenal. And they are going to inspire a nation too. and I really, really look forward to that. Thank you very much.
I'd now like to introduce Darren Gordon, who had the onerous task of going to collect the lantern from London this morning, for which he gets the only T-shirt that we've got, the Paralympics T-shirt. So definitely rewarded for that. He has past experience as a Paralympian, and I'd like you to welcome him.
I don't want to let go of it. It was a huge honour to first be asked to go and collect the flame, and what turned out to be an absolutely extraordinary event. I mean, there was some fantastic speeches. Boris didn't let us down. Absolutely fantastic. But what does it mean? I mean, what is this about? Why are we holding this flame like this? I mean, really, what we have here is the spirit of the Paralympic Games. And if we think back, the Paralympics started in the UK at Stoke Mandeville, 1948, and it was really as a means of rehabilitation. There was the injured soldiers from the Second World War, and at the time they were trying to find a means of getting them physically active. It was thought that some form of competitive sport would be a great way of starting this, and they were born as what we now know as the Paralympic movement was born at Stoke Mandeville Hospital. And it's only fitting, really, that the Paralympics come back to the UK 6 years later, and in fact, what we know as the torch relay will start at Stoke Mandeville Hospital 24 hours before the opening ceremony of the Paralympic Games. To be a Paralympian has also been an extraordinary honour. If I hadn't been a Paralympian, I wouldn't be standing here today. To represent your country, you cannot beat it. I mean, I'm struggling to put it into words because you can't put it into words. But what you will see over the next 10 days of competition are extraordinary performances. And I implore you to look beyond the disability. There will be athletes with extreme disabilities, but look beyond it and look at what they are doing. These are elite athletes. They've trained for years for this one moment in time. They have been inspired by performances from the past. So the British athletes have been inspired by the likes of Dame Tanni Gray-Thompson, the likes of Chris Holmes, Adi Adapatan. This is the new generation, and we hope, and I believe, that they will inspire a new generation of athletes, but also a new generation of people who are interested in disability sports. And I'm using the term disability slightly oddly. I'm actually, I want you to imagine that in terms of the word disability, that the dis is in lowercase letters, and that the ability is in capitals. And think about the ability of these athletes, and marvel at Oscar Pistorius, who might not win actually. He might get beaten by a Brit in 100 metres.
A Cambridgeshire
marvel
Brit.
at it, absolutely. Go Johnny Peacock. But marvel at these athletes, marvel at the track cycling, which was my sport, and watch these, for example, in cycling, one-armed and one-legged cyclists. Think about that. Cycling with one leg and one arm, on a velodrome track with an angle of 42 degrees. And then being able to get out of the saddle. Okay, it's extraordinary performances. It will be an extraordinary fortnight of sport. We've had an extraordinary summer. We've had the Diamond Jubilee, we had the Olympics, and now we get the Paralympics. And it's the first time the Paralympics have really been to the UK since their birth. Embrace it, enjoy it, and have a whale of a time, because I know I'm going to. Thank you.
Well, we're very privileged here today because we've got not one but two Paralympians here to celebrate with us the arrival of the lantern. So I'd like to introduce next Matthew Juniper. Matthew, please do come and take the mic.
Thank you very much, and I'd like to thank actually everyone for organising this. It's been a fantastic day, really enjoyable. I greatly enjoyed the dancing earlier on, and it's a great privilege and honour to be here. I think, just a few words, I think when people see the Paralympics, they tend to think it's a sporting event for other people, people who aren't like them. But it's worth bearing in mind that, well, in fact, when we look at the TV campaign, it says, I think, meet the superheroes, which is very flattering, but perhaps conjures up images of an Olympic Games with Professor X and Inspector Gadget and so on. That's not quite what one might want of the Paralympics. Anyway, the reality is that the people in the Paralympics are just ordinary people to whom extraordinary things have happened. Some are born with a disability, some have it thrust upon them. In my case, I was a moderately fast runner and a rugby winger and lost a leg in a rugby accident. It's worth thinking about what happens when that adversity strikes, because I think this gets to the heart of why the Paralympics are so important. When adversity strikes, there's an important process of rehabilitation that Dan talked about at Stoke Mandeville. It's getting used to living in a slightly different way, and understandably one tends to focus on what one can no longer do. In my case, with one leg, ice skating is a disaster, and so is dancing, but I'm not sure I can really blame that on the leg. But there is another form of rehabilitation, which is crossing the finish line first with 7 able-bodied sprinters behind you, cursing because they couldn't catch the one-legged guy. And that, for me, is a much better form of rehabilitation, because it's great fun. It works better. And that's how the Paralympics started. It started in a rehabilitation clinic in Stoke Mandeville in 1948. I think that probably by Barcelona and Atlanta, but definitely by Sydney, it had become a mainstream event. And I think one of the most impressive sights of the London Olympics that Dan alluded to earlier was Oscar Pistorius. This is a man with no feet. He came second in his 400-metre heat, very respectively, against the best able-bodied athletes in the world. He then came last in the semi-final. Nonetheless, that puts him in the last 16 in the world. Pretty good. And I've never seen anybody look quite so nervous as he did at the beginning of the final, the semi-final. A lot goes on, by the way, inside the room in which you wait before you go out onto the track. A lot of mind games going on between the athletes. I don't know what was said in that room, who knows? But he came out looking very, very nervous onto that track, and I thought he did an absolutely amazing job. I think he did 45 seconds for 400 metres. And there aren't very many people in the world who can do that, as we saw at the Olympics. Now, part of that achievement is to do with the technology. Some of you might be interested in seeing a sprinting leg. I brought my own one in here. It's a little bit heavy. It's all made of carbon fibre. It's a great big spring. If anyone wants to see it afterwards, I'm more than happy to show you. Like any spring, when you put a great big mass on top of it, it tends to bounce at a resonant frequency. It's an amazing thing when you're running and you hit that frequency. It's a bit like, if you play cricket, it's like hitting a bat with a ball. Sorry, hitting a ball with a bat, just in the sweet spot. Races off the boundary. You hit that resonant frequency, and suddenly, bang, off you go. And it's worth looking at Oscar Pistorius, at Johnny Peacock, the British guy who is going to beat him, we all hope, in the 100 metres. Because they take a little while to get going, but once they've got going, they go as fast as an able-bodied athlete on their 2 artificial legs, in Oscar Pistorius' case. I think there's some debate these days about whether it's an advantage to have an artificial leg. And that's, I think, a sign of how far the Paralympics has come, that we're now talking about whether it's actually good to have 2 artificial legs instead of 2 real ones. My own view is that it's not. Excuse me. My own view is that it's not, basically, because an able-bodied athlete has a calf at the end of his leg through which he can put force and therefore put more force into each step. On the other hand, an amputee can stay on the ground for longer, and so put the force in for a longer amount of time. Those 2 things sort of cancel each other out. Very much in the air as to which is more worthwhile. I don't think it's an advantage, but until we get Usain Bolt to come up with a rather macabre experiment, I'm not sure that we'll ever find out the answer. Anyway, the fact that we're asking the question at all, that's something, and that has all come down to pass because of the Paralympics. So as we look forward to London 2012, again, thank you very much, Olympics, for the dry run. Went very well. What can we expect to see? We'll see wheelchair basketball. This is my personal favourite because it is far more entertaining than able-bodied basketball, genuinely. It's not just about being tall, it's about being skillful. We'll see wheelchair athletes with arms bigger than most people's legs powering around the track faster than anybody on 2 legs can go. But we'll see cycling, swimming, judo, and I think around 18 other sports. And my own favourite, of course, is the people with artificial legs running 100 metres, and I think we're going to see the majority running 100 metres under 11 seconds. Now that's remarkable because there are only 100 people in Britain with 2 legs who can run 100 metres in under 11 seconds. It's a fantastic achievement. So while the Olympic Games are just that, they're games, they're fun, but in the big scheme of things, they're not all that important. The Paralympics go beyond that. On the one level, they are also just games like the Olympics, and in the big scheme of things, they're not all that important. But on another level, they're not just about what disabled people will do, they're about what they can do. And for those ordinary people to whom extraordinary things have happened, the Paralympics gives hope and inspiration that carries them through their darkest hours. For ordinary people who remain able-bodied, it's a magnificent, enjoyable, and sometimes awe-inspiring spectacle, and I hope you will enjoy it. It remains for me, anyway, to thank the organisers once again, and in a few moments I think we're going to send the flame back on its way to its next place. Is that right? Anyway, thank you very much, and
thank you very much. I hope you found all the speakers inspirational, but I think it's particularly inspiring actually to hear from those who've actually done it and to get that sense of the professionalism that goes into being really a world-class athlete. I hope that inspiration will mean that you will go and see what we've got on today if you haven't already and try some of those things. We do happen to have wheelchair basketball here today, and I've tried it myself and dismally failed at it, so I can tell you it's really quite difficult. We've got it in one of the halls, and everybody is welcome to have a go at that. We've got a lot of other sports too for you to try today, so if you haven't tried them already, can I encourage you to do so. We've also got cakes and tea, so again, if you haven't availed yourself of that, there were plenty left last time I looked, but I think they're going to go fairly fast. Finally, on offer, we have the opportunity to have your photograph taken with the flame here, so if you'd like to have your photograph taken, then do please stay here and we'll be able to offer that as an opportunity. I'd like finally to thank all those today who are up on stage who've made a contribution, both those who've talked and those who've been part of celebrating the day with us and made contributions as in carrying the lantern in. So could you put your hands together and thank everyone. And now I think Dan and the other lantern carriers will be available to have their photographs taken with anybody who would like that. So thank you very much.
Where will the dance be, please?
The dance. Just for anyone who also wanted to know that, the dance is outside. It's in the paved area just outside the apron. It's finished, has it? So it took place just as the famous...
There's another one. There's going to be another one by Peoples of Netherhall.
Okay, there's going to be another dance. I apologise for that. There's going to be another dance that will take place soon.
I'll ask them to move the banner back. We didn't know whether people were going to stand. That was
Right, thank you very much.
He's just...